This lesson, we're going to be logging into our Twitter developer account, and I'm going to show you a little bit more information where you can find out more about what's available within the Twitter search API. So there's a lot of different endpoints, and the one that we're going to be using is the search API endpoint. And you can see that the path is tweets.json, q, from, and NASA or NASA. So basically, this is the search term after the Q, and these are the tweet objects that get returned. And there's a ton of information here. And I always like to think of Twitter as one of those really massive JSON APIs. Each tweet object contains just a ton of information. And if you can get comfortable and get used to using the Twitter object and getting data from here, then any other API should be a piece of cake, because there's just so much information. There's multiple levels here that it can go down on and on and on. So there's a lot of information contained in every single tweet object. And they've got even more information available within the tweets. So search tweets standard search API. So again, this is the route that you need to know. And also, this is why we need to have our authentication, because if you try to go to that route, even if you're going from your web application, you need to authenticate. And this is why we need to use Node, because we need to authenticate in the backend, because you don't want your keys and your tokens visible. So let's go over and let me show you all the really amazing parameters and information you can get back. So you've got requests you can do in a 15-minute window, 180 JSON requests through an authorized app. You can do 450 every 15 minutes. So that's a lot of requests, and that will definitely keep you busy with tons and tons of data. So the first parameter is the queue. So this is for the query, whatever search term we're querying. And then they've got some other parameters that you can search within that search term as well. So you've got the geocode. So these are all optional. The only one that's actually required is the query. So you need to know maximum of 500 characters. There are some limits to that, but this is the initial query of the term that you're trying to search Twitter for. So you can look at particular geolocations, so wherever users are located in within a given radius. So that's the geocode, so latitude, longitude coordinates. Also language, so you could do various languages. So if you only want tweets within a specific language, you can do that. There's also locale, so language or locale based. So I don't use a lot of these. The only one that I really use, I'll use the query, obviously, of course, and also the count. So if I don't want to return back too many, we've got a maximum of 100. And if you don't set that, then you're automatically going to get 15, and you can set up to 100. So that's, again, a lot of data that you're coming back. And I always advise, if you're just starting out, just take one of those tweet objects and really look through it, get familiar with it. Also, another one that I use very commonly is Sense ID. So if I'm making a bunch of different requests, I pick up the last ID, especially if I'm storing it to a database. So I'll pick up the last ID that I have within the data that I've already pulled, and then I just do sense, and that allows me to pick up from the previous tweets that I've already pulled into and stored into my database. The max ID, so this is another one that you can set some parameters and include entities, so I don't really use those ones. So basically, the sense ID is the most important for me because it allows me to make multiple queries and pick up from where I last left off, the last ID. So this is an example of the response, and as said, there's just so much information. So I'm just going to go into JSON validator, and this is just another way that once you get this tweet object back, to make it more readable, to open and close the various objects, because there's so many different levels here. To get comfortable with this and be able to pull back and get access to the data that you're actually looking for, it can get fairly complex. So there we go. So once you clean it up, and yeah, sometimes there are copying it over, but if you did have it as a string value, it'd be a lot cleaner and easier to bring that in. So I've simply copied and pasted out that example one. And you can see that when you've got an actual JSON lint, you can actually read through this a little bit easier. So let's say, for instance, we see that everything is under statuses, and we see that we've got multiple statuses. So all of the tweet object information is contained under statuses. And then when you open up those statuses, you've got a bunch of levels that you can go down as well. So there's common ones are obviously the text. So this is the tweet information, the string ID. So this is if you want to link out to it. So ID underscore string, or you can use the numeric value. Also created at, so that's another important one. There's also URLs. So you've got the ability to grab the different URLs. So by default, Twitter will shorten the URL. So in order to grab that expanded URL, then you need to grab that. You can grab that within the tweet object. So it's got the shortened one as well as the extended one. So that's another important one to look at. There's some metadata here. And another important one, of course, is the user. So you want to get that user information. And this goes multiple levels deep as well. So user, so they've got the name, screen name, then they have entities. Location is another one that will go multiple levels deep. And then you've got some typical data here for that information, geo as well, favorited. So just a ton of information and definitely worth checking out and going through. So once you have all of that set up, and also make sure that you do have your Twitter account and you've got developer access to your Twitter account. And once you do have that, you can go to Twitter apps, and then all you have to do is create a brand new app. So I'm going to call it Twitter Tester Course. And then here we just need a description. So this can be anything, it doesn't really matter. Also you need a website, so a valid callback URL. So because I'm doing it locally, local won't work. So you can just put a website in there, and it's actually not going to matter. You can put whatever website you want in there. As long as it's a valid URL, they're fine with it. And if you have a website, obviously you can put your website in there. So once you've entered in, and I need to make sure that the name is unique. So once we're set up, then what we get is we get keys and access tokens. So these are what you're after in order to make the Twitter application work. So we've got, also we need to generate a token because we're going to need token access and also the consumer keys. So the consumer keys are what gives us the ability to do requests into the Twitter API, to do search, and then the access tokens if we want to post on the user or act on the user's behalf, the account's behalf, then we're going to need these as well. So if we want it to make use of posting, then we definitely need to get these access tokens. So once you've set all of that up, let's go back into our package here, and the one that we wanted to use, so we want to make use of this, where it's got the consumer key token, access token, and timeout. So copy those ones out, go into your index.js, and I'm also going to do const for this one. So here we need to enter in our consumer keys. So let's open up that, and I'm going to open it on the side here because we need to copy and paste in that information. So consumer key is the first one. So go ahead and enter that one in. Next, and of course these keys are very long, so usually better if you copy and paste them instead of trying to write them out. Next, access token, so grab that access token. And make sure that when you're copying and pasting, you get the whole key. Also, you're removing any spaces. And I like to keep that timeout in there, that you don't continuously try to keep requesting. So last, let's just clean that up. And we can minimize this now. And we've got our post and we've got the search. So the search is the one that we're after, that we want to actually get all of that tweet information. So let's do that in here. And we can update our search to our request parameters. And there's that count. So we know we've got a bunch of options here. So the query, the count, and if you wanted those other ones, you could enter those ones in as well. Let me make this big. And that's the problem there, that it's going over to the next line. So let's make sure, let's double check and make sure that our keys are right. So great, so it looks like it worked. We went over to our URL and we see that we logged out all of the Twitter data within our console. So that's all the Twitter information. We searched 100 of them. So let me change and update that, and we'll update that to be 5 for now. There's 100's an awful large number, and let's test that again. So do node. So refresh. And again, we got a ton of information that came in here. And you can see that the source, so we got Twitter information, and it's exactly as the tweet object that we were looking at. So now it's just a matter of grabbing the information we want, and I'll show you how to do that coming up next.